6 miles from Indianapolis, Indiana, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the most famous speedway in the world, opened in 1909. There's a look at the pagoda. Inside the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 2.5 miles around, rectangular in shape. There is such a thing for an oval. So much history here at the Brickyard. And guys, as I said, it opened in 1909. Now, great history. We are honored and privileged to be here, but we need to talk about 2008. By any measure, it was a huge disappointment. Some people called it a fiasco because of the tire situation. Larry, Jeff, I don't think there's any way to underscore how much effort, time, and money has gone into fixing or rectifying that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the sport for almost 30 years, and we've certainly had some bumps in the road along the way with the Goodyear tire. Go back to the days of the Goodyear Hoosier tire war. Go back when they first put the concrete at Dover. But, yeah, I don't think we've ever been caught off guard like we were here a year ago. But you've got to tip your hat to everybody at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, because in the last 361 days, we've had 7 tests with over 31 teams, over 13,000 miles. And you know what, Jeff? That first practice, things are looking mighty good.
Mighty good. He's going to talk about the fact that totally uneventful. We got guys who put 26 laps during that practice session on their tires. You know, maybe run a couple different sets, but in the past we've not been able to do that. We've been wearing tires out in 5 to 10 to 12 laps. And Steve, so far it's really looking very promising for probably one of the more exciting races we've ever had here at the Brickyard. A lot of people running and gunning because of the fact they've brought a lot of new equipment here, new engines, new cars, made a lot of improvements during the week off that they had. Feel like they're rejuvenated, and they know it's time to get the second half of the season really underway. And what a better way to do it than be able to put a victory in the win column here at Brickyard.
And guys, as we watch Carl Edwards, his teammate Greg Biffle, the quickest. We had a 1-hour practice. Now we have a second 1-hour practice. You heard John Roberts talk about it. They'll qualify scheduled for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
And I think we may see a little different practice here. I think in the first practice that a lot of the teams were more concerned with long runs, especially our top 35 guys. But now that we have a little warm, fuzzy feeling about the tires, the guys have a little information about long runs, I think you'll see a lot of them really get into that qualifying mode during this practice session here.
And the other thing about that, as cooler as it gets here, we get a little bit of cloud cover right now. The track's going to cool off a little bit. It'll be more indicative of what you're going to expect come Saturday morning when the qualifying starts at 10 a.m. And we've already talked about the fact, you know, that who drew out number one in that whole deal, Sam Hornish Jr. He'll get the benefit of a cool racetrack. A lot of people will tell you, well, I'd rather be like 4th or 5th in line. And right now, you know, a guy like Mark Martin or Dale Earnhardt Jr. goes out 6th. They may wind up being the beneficiary of getting, you know, kind of clean the racetrack off and then all of a sudden still having a cool.
Now, these teams always factor weather into the equation. Looking at the weather forecast, 40 to 50% chance of showers beginning at 10 a.m. tomorrow, which is when, in theory, we do start qualifying.
Well, it's one of the reasons they wanted to get some race runs in today, and they wanted to get some practice qualifying runs. And, Jeff, you talked about the qualifying order certainly wanting to go out fairly early because the track will be the coolest. As we look at Carl Edwards here in the 99 car, now remember, our top 35 in owner points, they go out first. Carl will go out 33rd, so not exactly the perfect qualifying draw for this 99 group.
No, but how about that Greg Biffle guy? The one he's going to be on trackside later on tonight, get a chance to kind of pick his brain. But I know that they spent their off week doing some short track testing, really working hard to try to get their program turned around. And this is the same car, Steve, that they tire tested with up here. So Greg Irwin, they knew what they had coming up here. They were pretty confident in that setup, and at least in that first practice session, and they were darn quick too.
And you know, we just saw Carl Edwards, a Roush Fenway car. We're looking at Greg Biffle, and we talked about this at Chicagoland Speedway. There's only 2 tracks that Roush Fenway they've never won at. Chicagoland was one of them. This is the other one, Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
And you can believe right now the Cat in the Hat would love for one of his drivers, no matter who it is, to be able to carry that operation to victory lane. As we take a look right there at Greg Biffle, he's going to look like he was making a qualifying attempt, and he went up there. He's 5th quickest right now.
Guys, one other note about the tire situation. I read this morning that, and I think this is really good news, that Goodyear, because of all the testing, and Larry, you mentioned 31 teams, close to 14,000 miles of testing, a lot of what they've learned here, they can incorporate at other racetracks, and that is fantastic.
I think it has a lot to do with procedure, Steve. I mean, in the past, and Terry and Larry's been a part of it, there was like a certain way that they tested tires, and it always proved out to be pretty successful. But all of a sudden, they got through a curve here at Indy that they did not rebound from. You know, we always knew when you came to Indy, you know, you lay down some rubber, and tire wear would always be really high early on, and it got better as the weekend progressed. But last year, it never got better. As a matter of fact, if you had to say anything, it probably got worse come race day, and everybody had to pay for it. Not only the competitors, but Goodyear and the fans. So, you know, they walked away from here knowing they needed to change their procedure, and they came up, I think, with a better way of testing, and I think they proved it out here. They really put a lot of effort into it. They came up with some new technology, and I think all in all, I think tires from the result of what's going on here at Indy, Goodyear will do a better job from now through the next, you know, few races or next year or two, from everything they do, because of the photography, the way they're approaching, you know, compounds as far as track conditions. I mean, everything that goes into it. I think they definitely had their eyes opened up, and everybody's going to benefit from it.
And we're looking at Sam Hornish in this 77 car. This is his first lap of this practice session. He jumps up to 6th quickest. Now, Sam has one Sprint Cup Series start here. He finished 21st. His first trip here to the Indianapolis 500, his parents came here when his mom was 8 months pregnant with Sam. So really? That's how he came to watch the race.
Now, how did you find that out?
I got people searching stuff out left and right.
Had to be that girl Lisa that works for him back there in North Carolina.
Maybe. 20 drivers out on the racetrack in this second practice here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Casey Kane just jumped to the top of the charts, besting the 11 car of Denny Hamlin. In third place, we've got Mark Martin. And I don't want to leave this guy out because he's another one of these guys who understands what Indy's all about. Robbie Gordon, that 7 car, is currently 4th. And we take a look at the 31 of Jeff Burton.
You know, you talked about brand new cars, Jeff. About the entire Richard Childress Racing stable brought brand new cars here. The only car that's not completely brand new is the 29 car. That's actually a car that was brand new at Chicagoland Speedway 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I talked to several people over there, including Richard Childress, and they said that, hey, we treat Indy a lot like we treat Daytona. We have a second package we're bringing out here with better engines, better cars. We're kind of like throwing everything at it. We're going to see exactly where we stand, because this is an important race for them.
Jeff Burton down on the access road. He's going to head to the garage, and we take a look at the Chrysler Friday menu here on Speed. NASCAR Live follows us, followed by the Camping World Truck Series qualifying over at ORP Crosstown. Greg Biffle and Juan Pablo Montoya join us for trackside, and then the trucks. They don't play nice.
Not at all.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Indianapolis is brought to you by Jeep. Glad you're with us here from the Brickyard, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And Steve Burns, Jeff Hammond, Larry McReynolds with you atop the Speedway. The pagoda to the right is where we're stationed. Guys, look down that front stretch. That's looking from turn 1. The first time I came here was 1995, NASCAR's first visit here officially in 94. Couldn't believe that you could get a stock car, big old heavy NASCAR race car, to turn left after that straightaway.
Well, yeah, that front stretch is 5/8 of a mile long. And what makes this racetrack so unique is if you go back to Chicagoland Speedway 2 weeks ago, you've got 2 ends of the racetrack. You have 2 entrances, you have 2 middles of the corner, you have 2 exits. Here, you have that 4 times. You have 4 entrances, because between turn 1 and 2, you have a little 1/8 mile straightaway. Between turn 3 and 4, you have a little 1/8 mile straightaway. So that's what makes it a challenge, is you have to deal with 4 entrances, getting the car to go through 4 middles of the corner, and then being able to apply the power on 4 exits of the corner.
Kurt Busch, that number 2. Miller Lite Dodge out of Penske. Also joining us here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Wendy Venturini and Bob Dillner, and we start with Bob.
Well, Steve, you guys have been talking about tires in that first segment. Well, the good thing is not many people down here in the garage area really talking about tires. And if they are, they have been smiling. But NASCAR has helped these teams just a little bit too. Usually you get 6 sets of tires for a given weekend up until the race. Well, this weekend the teams have 10 sets. NASCAR and Goodyear has allowed them those extra sets of tires for the practice sessions here. Now, Kurt Busch was one of the guys that got bit by the tire bug here last year. He finished 40th after having a cut tire earlier in the race. I just spoke to their tire specialist, Moose Nichols, and he told me the tires look good. In fact, this is the right rear that comes off that number 2 machine in the first practice. This is the right front, and this is the area where we saw a lot of the cording here last year. Well, if you take a look at it right now, this tire has 23 laps on it, and there are no cords, and that's a very good thing. Now, Kurt Busch says he thinks the verdict is still out on the tires. He thinks they are very good so far, but the problem, or the only problem that they are seeing, is very high temperatures on what's called the shoulder, where their sidewall meets the actual plane of the tire, and that's something they will keep an eye on during these practice sessions. Over to Wendy Venturini.
Thanks, Bob. Since tires haven't been an issue here in Indianapolis so far today, the people in the media center needed something to talk about, and who did they talk about? It was Juan Pablo Montoya when they thought a backup car was being rolled out of the hauler earlier. Now, if you missed Hermie Sadler's report on NASCAR Live a short time ago, he reported about Juan's car. Now, when the backup car was taken out, it wasn't for the racetrack. What happened was this special paint scheme that Juan Pablo Montoya is running this weekend is a throwback to his 2000 Indianapolis 500 win with that target paint scheme. Well, what they did, they took out the backup car, they went to the media center for a press conference, and all eyes in the garage headed towards the 42. During inspection, they thought something was wrong with the 42, and there was speculation if they could get through tech inspection line. That wasn't the case. Everything is all fine with the 42 in their primary car. In fact, it's so fine, it was second fastest in the first practice, and right now it's at the top of the chart, guys.
All right, thank you, Wendy. And folks, do want to pass along one breaking news item. Earlier today, the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in NASCAR's favor, upholding a May 1st suspension that Jeremy Mayfield received for failing a drug test. So the Jeremy Mayfield saga continues. Also hearing today, there's a published report that Mayfield has sold his team to Georgia businessman John Carter.
Yeah, it's been like watching a ping pong match pretty much, just watching this thing go back and forth. But, you know, the only comment I've made very boldly ever since it first broke a couple of months ago, I 100% support NASCAR being very aggressive with the substance abuse policy. Our guys don't have footballs or baseballs or basketball in their hand. They have the 3,550-pound race cars with over 800 horsepower. NASCAR has to be aggressive with the substance abuse policy.
Yep, they got to do it, Larry, and they're doing a good job at it right there. We're taking a look at Clint Boyer, who's 4th quickest in this practice session. I think we'll get an opportunity here to see what everybody has got to show. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., for all you Earnhardt Jr. fans out there, he's now jumped up there to 3rd quickest. So it looks like Mr. Earnhardt has got some good speed in that 88 car this year.
Now, something we probably do need to mention, we have 46 cars here, if you didn't, Steve, and that means 3 cars will go home. We actually have 2 past champions that are part of the go-homers. Bill Elliott in the 21 car, who looks like if everything goes well, he should well qualify on time with that 21 car. And then Terry Labonte is here in the 08 car. Terry did not even practice in that first practice session.
And Juan Pablo Montoya is fastest in this practice. Casey Kane 2nd quick. As Jeff mentioned, Dale Earnhardt Jr. 3rd. As we mentioned, Clint Boyer 4th. And Kevin Harvick, past winner here. Harvick winning in 2003 is 5th.
Watching Jamie McMurray in this 26 car. This is the same car he finished 21st with back at Lowe's in May. This is just a team that they just need to get something going here in these final 17 races. You look at 2009, they only have 4 top 10 finishes. It's just time for something to start happening with this team.
I think for all the Roush Fenway cars, I know they got a few up there in the top 12 in points, but to really get them competitive. And guys, I want to go back to this shot of the front straightaway. Right now, there's not a lot of fans in there, but this is one of the most unique experiences that I've ever had happened to me. You go to Bristol and you talk about the 100-some thousand fans, but can you imagine on Sunday morning when you line your car up, 100,000 fans? and you kind of like split them, and all of a sudden you got on both sides of you. And from the grandstands on the inside of the racetrack, the grandstands on the outside of the racetrack, you talk about baseballs and footballs, well, you can throw it across the racetrack. That's how close they are to the action. And I don't think I've ever had the feeling that I did the first year that we were here, and every time I walked out there on that pit road since then, that you get with all those people being so close to you, hollering and cheering. It's a great, great feeling. I think it's the only place in motorsports I've ever been around, at least as far as NASCAR tracks, that you can get that sensation.
257,000 permanent seats here at Indy. We'll be back with more practice from the Brickyard. Sunday, NASCAR race day rolls into Indianapolis, where defending race winner Jimmy Johnson and former Indy 500 winner Juan Pablo Montoya join us live to discuss what it's like to win at the historic Brickyard. Coverage beginning at 11 Eastern here on Speed. Second practice continues here at Indy. Quickest thus far is Juan Pablo Montoya. His fastest speed is 180.15 miles per hour. In terms of time, that's 49.95 seconds. Montoya, the only driver under a 50-second lap.
And we were just looking at Brian Vickers in that 83 car, who seems to be the cat to sit on poles left and right everywhere we go. And right now, Brian Vickers is 11th quickest in that 83 Toyota.
Right now, you're looking at a Mears at Indianapolis, which is not unusual, because Rick Mears has been pretty much synonymous when it comes to this racetrack. And currently, that is Casey Mears in the 07 for Richard Childers Racing, and he's just jumped up the charts to 14th quickest.
Yeah, Jeff, Rick Mears has 5 poles and 4 wins in the Indy 500, and then Casey's dad, Roger, actually started in the 1983 Indy 500.
You can believe right now it's got to be on his wish list of a place to win.
Well, and Casey actually attempted one Indy 500. It was with a pretty much an underfunded race team, and they actually didn't qualify for the race that year.
Elliott Sadler, our trackside buddy, 26th right now. Completed 3 laps in this session.
He's going to take the night off, though. He's got other engagements tonight, so it'll just be the 3 amigos.
Hey, did you know that he's a geek?
What?
Yeah,
that's not nice.
It's on his car. He's part of the Geek Squad from Best Buy.
But you know what he's the happiest about? In every quote I read, it was about the second sentence. This is the first weekend that 19 car will have that new R6 P8 engine in it, just like his teammate Casey Kane has been running a few races, and like Penske has been running all year.
Well, Larry, Jeff, some names synonymous with the Brickyard, like Foyt, Mears, as you mentioned. How about Andretti?
Of course. You can't have Indianapolis without having an Andretti.
And we did not have an Indianapolis 500 this past year without an Andretti, because we remember all the nail biting on final day of qualifying.
Oh, yeah.
John finally squeezed in there and started the Indy 500.
Sat there and watched that with Darrell Waltrip at his house there in Charlotte before we went to a function that afternoon. But John brought it through, and right now, you know, he's out there making laps here at Indianapolis.
Stay with us here on Speed from the Brickyard. Joey Logano, making his first NASCAR Sprint Cup Series start here at the Brickyard, was one of the drivers who participated in a tire test. Jeff Hammond, what are you laughing at?
I'm just enjoying watching the fans out through the front of our viewing window right now. I mean, just great to have this booth where we are and watching Joey Logano make laps, but the fans are just having a great time.
Part of the show.
Part of the show.
There's a man that won 2 Brickyard 400s in that 20 car, Tony Stewart, in the 14 car, our points leader. Right now, he is 32nd quickest.
Let's go to Bob Dillner.
Juan Pablo Montoya, the fastest so far in this second practice session. He was also very quick in that first one, and he told me something funny. He said, you actually get worried a little bit when you're this fast, this quick.
Yeah, you know, we got to be careful, because the car feels really good, and it seems to be good in race trim, good in qualifying trim, but I don't know. I just, you know, I'll tell you the truth, everybody at this Target car has done such an amazing job every week in and week out. And our goal still, you know, you get excited because you say, oh my God, you know, we're at Indy and you can win the race and everything, we got the pace. But we gotta remember why we're here, and it's making that chase. So our goal hasn't changed yet.
All right, Juan Montoya, they're about to go out for another qualifying run here, and he has very good results in the last 6 races, 5 top 10 finishes, guys.
And Bob, he is 9th in points coming into Sunday's race. Of course, the top 12 transferred to that chase battle.
To me, it's amazing to watch what they've been able to put together over there in recent weeks and realizing what the big picture is and what their main goal is. A lot of people are talking about championships, but they're just talking about making it to the championship, and they're not worried about winning races at this point in time. Just scoring points.
Here's a guy right here that's not breathing very easy. Matt Kenseth in his 17 car. He's 12th in the points, just 10 points in front of his teammate Greg Biffle. News out of this camp this week. After 10 years, DeWalt being the primary sponsorship on the 17 car, they will not return as a sponsor in 2010.
Larry, getting back to the point situation, 7th through 13th, separated by just 100 points.
Yeah, mathematically, Ryan Newman, who is 7th, he could leave here 13th. And Greg Biffle, who is 13th, could leave here 7th. And I just continue to say, I don't mean to sound like a broken record. I think this is going to go all the way down to the wire in 7 races when the checker flag waves at Richmond.
There's the 2002 winner of the Brickyard 400, now known as the Allstate 400, Bill Elliott.
Currently 16th quickest in this practice session.
Now in this practice, a lot like our first practice session, we've only had 1 car that's not practiced, and that's Terry Labonte in the 08 car, who would be eligible for the past champion provisional.
Bill Elliott up to 8th. As Jeff and Larry mentioned, Elliott very quick in the first practice. And boy, I tell you what, Jeff Gordon holds, or he leads at least 7 different categories here at the Brickyard. Wins, top 5s, laps led. Pretty amazing what he's done here at this famous racetrack.
Well, let's also bring out the fact that he is one of 4 drivers that have run all 15
races.
of these races. I mean, Jeff Gordon, Jeff Burton,
Bobby Labonte,
and oh, come on.
Anyone?
Mark Martin.
But Jeff Gordon, is the only one of those drivers that's run all 15 with the same car number.
Interesting, Larry Mack. That's a good nugget.
Like that, huh?
I like that.
You don't have to look it up. I already did.
Jeff Gordon won the very first race here in 1994. And, you know, Gordon was quoted this week as saying, you know, a lot of the drivers have talked about how much prestige there is to come here. But Jeff had an interesting point. Coming here to the Brickyard helped push NASCAR mainstream. It was a big way for this sport to be accepted.
But I'm going to tell you, there's a unique story. Jeff was part of it. Our Jeff Hammond was part of it. I was part of it. I can remember getting the call in about April or May of 1992 from Bill French Jr. that asked us, what would you think about taking a NASCAR car to Indianapolis and testing it? And we all came here. It was the Monday and Tuesday after the June Michigan race. 9 race teams came here. I was with the 28 car. Davey Allison actually came here, and we did 2 days of tire testing. And Jeff, it just seemed like we were out of place at first. People looked at us funny, it seemed like.
But they were excited for us to be here. Again, Mark Martin can allude to that. He was driving for Jack Roush at the time. But it was a very special moment to be able to be the first organizations, I guess you might say, the first teams to show up here and come through Gasoline Alley. As we take a look at the 5 car, who is currently 11th, and I think Bob Dillner's got more on Mark.
Well, Mark Martin very happy with his race car, and the team told me before this practice session, it's all about balance for that number 5 car. And the great thing for tomorrow for Mark Martin, he will go out 3rd in qualifying. That's reverse of what you would normally want to do, but since qualifying is in the morning here, you want to go out early. He's got a good draw, but what they're working on right now is some front springs on this car. And you can see I have a spring right here from the Hendrick stables, and you can see this tape right here. Okay, what they're doing is they have bump stops on the front shocks here, but they also put this tape on the shocks, actually on the springs right here, and then as it compresses, as it goes in the corner, they are actually able to see once the spring compresses, it will make a mark on this yellow tape if it actually coil binds, if these coils compressed together. So that's right now what Alan Gustafson is trying to figure out with this 5 machine in the qualifying type runs, is whether or not these coils are compressing enough so that they touch this yellow tape. And that's very important for qualifying, isn't it, crew chiefs?
Well, and it's going to be different qualifying and in race trim because they put the tape on the nose. That puts more downforce and the car travels more. But it's all about a timing thing. This racetrack is very smooth. You do not have bumps and dips to deal with for the most part. So what you want, just as that splitter is sealed against the asphalt, you want those bump stops to stop the travel of the car. You want it right where those springs are all but touching, and that's left front and right front for the most part.
Yeah, because you don't want all of a sudden that spring to make it seem like it's I guess you might say, I like working like a spring and making the car kind of like feel like it's got too much right front spring in it. You want it all to work together. Otherwise, it'll make the car feel like it's pushing. You want to keep the car working through these corners. Larry's already talked about how tricky it is at this particular racetrack. And if you do not get this stuff worked out properly, you leave a lot of speed on the table. This is one of those times, Steve, that all the little details, we've already talked about the 21 car, they pay attention to details. That's where your speed is here at Indy.
On board with Jeff Burton. Glad you're with us here from Indianapolis. Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Indianapolis is brought to you by the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Be there when the lights come on as NASCAR Sprint Cup night racing comes to the Atlanta Motor Speedway on Labor Day weekend. Go to atlantamotorspeedway.com for event and ticket information. Let's go back down to the garage. Wendy Venturini has an update on our 4-time Brickyard winner, Jeff Gordon.
And an Indiana native himself, Jeff Gordon had a very busy and very encouraging day yesterday when he landed from New York City. Jeff Gordon headed over to the Riley Children's Hospital where he met with many of the kids there and then went on to a bowling tournament that raises money for Riley Children's Hospital. Jeff and I sat down yesterday at that hospital for this week's Real Deal. You'll see Sunday on race day, but his race car is not as encouraging at the moment right now. The team in qualifying trim working on the car. They said they're so far off on the speed, they haven't really started fine-tuning anything on the 24 at this point. Jeff Gordon is having a tough time with this qualifying trim, as you see Steve Letarte getting in the window there to chat with Jeff off the radio, of course.
Yeah, right now, the only Hendrick car in the top 10, you mentioned a while ago, Jeff, is Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is 5th.
On board with Joey Logano is a great look at, particularly from the driver's point of view, of really how flat this racetrack is.
9 degrees of banking, pretty much about as flat as anywhere we go. Fairly symmetrical racetrack, but you saw the view get down into turn 1, and this is a little bit what Jeff was talking about a while ago. Now this is going down the back straightaway. Look how different it looks getting off the turn 3. The entrances are pretty much the same, but drivers will tell you turn 1 it's just a different feel because of the way the grandstands are on both sides getting into the corner.
It's like running down a tunnel as you come down the front straightaway, a totally different perspective. And I think it also changes the way you anticipate turning off into the corners. Even though this racetrack is very symmetrical, and 1 and 2 represent 3 and 4.
All right, let's listen to the throttle right here up the short chute. Had to feather just a little bit right there. Now, in the perfect world, now he got a plug check right there. In the perfect world, Wendy, on fresh tires qualifying, when you pick the throttle back up off the exit of 1, you don't get back out till you get to turn 3, Wendy.
Yeah, and as we're listening right now to Greg Zipadelli talk to rookie Joey Logano, asking him how the car is. The last time out, Joey said he felt like he was going faster, but unfortunately Zipadelli reported back his time was actually slower. It could be a comfort level. They threw stickers on, just like you said, Larry Mack, and trying to gain some more speed. Joey Logano continues to give feedback to Greg Zipadelli as he drives into the garage area.
Thank you, Wendy. Guys, fascinating to listen to Joey Logano, just 19 years old, the youngest driver to race here at the Brickyard in NASCAR competition. But my question to both you guys is, how much braking are they using here? I heard him get off the throttle, but what about braking?
You're going to use quite a bit, Steve, but the way you use it, I think, is the key, because you don't want to break your momentum. You want to help set the front end of the car to help it get in and through the center of the corner. But if you hit it too much, then you lose that momentum. And again, it will kill you. Larry will tell you right quick, you've got to carry momentum across these short chutes. and take advantage of it here. That's one of the keys to some of the guys that go fast, and I think a guy like Juan Pablo Montoya and even Max Pappas, who's raced here at Indianapolis, they have an appreciation of how that momentum has got to be carried across from when you get into and through turn 1 to go across over to turn 2, how important that is, the way you enter that corner and how much braking, man, it's huge.
When it comes to qualifying, Steve, even though this is a fairly wide racetrack, it seems to be forgiving. It's a very line-sensitive racetrack, especially as you drive off in the corner with the speed you carry into turn 1 and into turn 3.
Juan Pablo Montoya is the only driver under 50 seconds, 49.95, 180.15 miles per hour. Bob Dillner, Kevin Harvick, a former winner here, is third quickest overall. What's going on in the 29 camp?
Well, the funny thing is, and you know how it goes, Steve, when you go around the garage area as a pit reporter, the team will come up to you and they know what you want right away. And they came up to me here while Kevin's sitting in the car and they said, that time must have been a computer glitch. Absolutely not. We didn't turn that fast. We haven't been that fast all year long. So they have a good sense of humor about it. Right now, Kevin actually likes his car. And how they know this, the team told me he's not saying much. Kevin doesn't say much when he likes the car a lot. So they're going to make another qualifying type run here at the end of this practice session, which we have about 20 minutes to go. But obviously Kevin Harvick has been in the news in the past week or so, especially with the fact that there was a report that he was going to leave the team or asked for a release of his contract at the end of the season. But Richard came back on Wednesday, Richard Childress, and said Kevin Harvick and Shell and Pennzoil will be back with RCR next year with this 29 car. So if there's any place that Kevin Harvick is going to run well, it's here. He has that win back a couple years ago and also has 3 top 5 finishes here as well, Steve.
And boy, did Richard Childress put a release out. It was short, but to the point. I've never seen a release where every word, every letter was capitalized. That I have an agreement with Kevin Harvick, I have an agreement with Shell Pennzoil. We will be all together in 2010.
I think in email etiquette, that's called yelling.
Pretty much. Or being very bold.
Well, Mark Martin has just jumped to the top of the speed charts. Second driver under the 50-second mark, 49.82 for Mark Martin. We'll be right back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway here on Speed.
This is Rutledge Wood. Join me and the speed team at Michigan International Speedway this August in the new Speed Zone. Turn 1 seats are going for $45. Supplies are limited, so act fast. Call 800-354-1010 or visit mispeedway.com to purchase.
About 17 minutes left in this practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. Their second practice of this Friday afternoon. Beautiful weather here in Indianapolis. Temperatures around 80, 81 degrees.
You know what's interesting about this race is we have 17 races to go, and unlike the last couple of years, we actually have one more off weekend. Right after Bristol, before we head to Atlanta, we have an off weekend in late August. But I think this is when all the teams really start to look across at the chase and the end of the season. And when you think about it, in the 15-year history of NASCAR racing here at Indianapolis, the race winner of this Brickyard 400, the same team, they went on to win the Sprint Cup Series championship 7 times, which obviously would include the 48 team and Jimmy Johnson in 2006 and 2008.
And Wendy Venturini has more information on that 48 team.
Right now, they've been 14th on the chart this practice session. The car has been in the garage area for quite some time. Jimmy Johnson has been out of the race car with the helmet and Hans device still on. Was talking in the front of the car with Chad Knaus for quite some time as the crew feverishly made some adjustments to that race car with the wedge and whatnot. Now, I do know that there is damage on the right-hand side of the race car, but it was not from this practice session. It is from the first practice session on that right rear quarter panel, and it looks from here cosmetic damage only. With only 30 minutes between these practice sessions, they have opted not to worry about that cosmetic thing and try and work on the feeling and the comfort level of this race car for Jimmy Johnson. Bob?
Sam Hornish Jr. very happy with his race car over here in the 77 pit. Sam Hornish Jr., a former Indy 500 winner, right now 9th quick, and he has a very good thing happening for him tomorrow. He is the very first car to take the track for qualifying tomorrow. Right now, he says the car is just a touch loose, but of course, we are under bright blue skies, sunny conditions. The track is pretty warm, so it could be a good thing. When they get to tomorrow morning, the track tightens up. We have that cooler temperature. managers and crew chiefs, I think we need to explain this a little bit more because that draw is so important. We mentioned Mark Martin going out third tomorrow. Sam Hornish Jr. will go out first. How important is that draw for tomorrow in qualifying?
Bob, I mean, it's this, I think, pretty much sets the tone for the entire weekend. If you get an early draw, all of a sudden you're going to get a free 2 to possibly 3 tenths of a second, because that's what the track is going to have in it. It's going to have that much more grip. It'll allow you to drive off in there, be a little more aggressive getting in, but more importantly, probably be more aggressive getting off and through the, these little short shoots from corner to corner. And that's where you're going to make up your speed. Not to mention, it will be cooler, so the engine itself will probably make more horsepower. All these things kind of come into play. So going out early here at Indianapolis, because this track, and Larry, you know this to be true, when it sees the sun, it slows down and it gets hard to get a hold of.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been up here in just a cloud covering, just for a few minutes, pick you up a half a second.
I mean, it can happen on either end of the racetrack. This place is so big, Steve. If you get a cloud cover over 1 and 2, it could pick you up there, and you can cost you the same way at the other end.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. 6th fastest right now. And matter of fact, he goes out 6th tomorrow morning for qualifying.
He comes in here with 7 races remaining to the chase. 21st in the Sprint Cup Series points, 367 points out of the top 12. You think about 367, that's a full 2 races out. So don't look like this team's going to make the chase.
Say, don't look or ain't going to make it.
I'm pretty close to saying they're not going to make it.
Come on now, make a decision.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. They're not going to make it.
All right. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to do it, not this year. But still, they've got a great opportunity to turn it around and make a run for it. Winning a couple races over this next little bit would be huge.
It would be great medicine for this team. Look at Kurt Busch in the 2 car. Right now, he's 11th quickest. He's only run a total of 3 laps, so it's obviously this team is strictly working on qualifying runs.
3 top 10 finishes for Kurt Busch here at the Brickyard, a best finish of 5th back in 2001.
Now, Rusty Wallace finished 2nd a couple of times here in the Brickyard 400 driving this 2 car, actually 3 times, but you think about the owner, Roger Penske, 12 poles, 15 wins in the Indy 500, including the pole in the win this year by Elio Castroneves.
That's a remarkable record.
It really is. And this is the 100th anniversary, right? The
1909. 1909, the Brickyard opened. Over 3 million bricks used to pave this track.
That's a nugget, too.
It's a nugget, Larry. Mark Martin, the quickest as we close in on the end of this 2nd practice here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Now, Jimmy Johnson sat on the pole a year ago at a 49.515, almost 182 miles per hour. I'd say if conditions are right, it obviously won't be a track record. The track record is a 48.31, but I'd say we may end up possibly running a little faster than we did a year ago.
I think I've got a really good chance, especially if it winds up being cloudy like they're anticipating tomorrow around 10 o'clock here at the Speedways. We take a look at Jimmy Johnson.
Now, the tire combination that we're running here through all those tests, it's actually the same left side tire that we race at Pocono, where the real difference, which is where the real problem, is in the right side tire. A totally different combination.
Let's go to the garage and Bob Dillner.
Steve, you know, it's pretty funny. This is a 2.5-mile racetrack, very big in Sprint Cup Series turns, but even during practice, some people can get in the way, and that's what happened to the 43 of Reed Sorensen on his last time trial type run. The 75 of Derek Cope kind of moved up in front of them. That was supposed to be the final run for Reed Sorensen, but because he got held up just a little bit, the 43, they are trying to cool down this car so he can make one last qualifying type run. Right now, he's a little bit free, but he's 5th on the speed charts, and Reed Soren is really needing a good run here at the Brickyard 400, where he is a former top 5 finisher. Wendy?
And our points leader is in the garage area, Tony Stewart, a 2-time Brickyard 400 winner, working on that car. The qualifying trim set up right now. Crew Chief Darian Grubb has been talking back and forth with Tony Stewart. Now, before this last run, he was 34th on the chart, and this last time out with those sticker tires, he moved up 10 spots to 24th and picked up 0.3 of a second for Tony Stewart. They are going to make some more changes to the right front side of the race car and try and get another run in.
You know, back to Reed Sorensen, Bob talked about a top 5 finish, and that was back in 2007 driving for Ganassi. He actually sat on the pole for that race.
Yeah, and as far as 2009 concerned, as we watch Kevin Harvick, Reed Sorensen, 28th in points, just one top 10 finish. That came at the season opening Daytona 500.
You know, I want to go back to Tony Stewart. We're watching him get his car ready to come back out to the Speedway to make another qualifying attempt. And we're watching Kevin Harvick, who is still currently 4th in his practice session. Guys, think about a guy coming to this racetrack and having something that really means a lot to them. We all understand that Tony Stewart, not that far down the road from Indianapolis, winning here before, having run in the Indianapolis 500, but running that number 14 that was made famous by legendary A.J. Foyt, who's a 4-time winner of the Indianapolis 500. Could you imagine how important it would be for Tony Stewart to be able to put his name on the trophy one more time on the 100th anniversary of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway here at the Brickyard?
And I'd say, based on how he's running overall, Jeff, and how he ran at Pocono back in June by winning the race,
Better watch out.
I'm going to tell you, if I had to put my money, I believe that 14 would be pretty tough.
And they're running that car that he won the All-Star race with in Lowe's with a little bit of modification to it.
Now, this is the car that's been MIA here for most of the practice today. Terry Labonte in this 08 car. This will be his first time on the racetrack. Now, no matter what, we do know that this car will race in the Brickyard 400 on Sunday. 2 past champions here. It's not in the top 35, Bill Elliott and Terry Labonte, but Terry is the most recent Sprint Cup Series champion.
Labonte's most recent championship coming in 1996.
And Bill was 1988.
I'll give you a nugget.
Well, it's about time.
Saw Terry Labonte this past weekend.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let me guess. He was hunting and you were with him wearing camouflage.
No, we
Shooting
were actually back in our old alma mater in Rhonda, North Carolina, celebrating the 80th birthday of Miss Flossie Johnson.
Wow.
And we were up there at our old race shops and had about 300 visitors, and probably out of that 300 we had maybe almost 30 members of our former teams. I mean, from Hinky Eames to Henry Field, I mean, you name it, Bud Green, there was a bunch of people. Carolyn Yates and Robert were there. Tim Brewer was there with his wife. It was a great evening to have an opportunity to say how much we care about Flossie Johnson and who was so important to many of us. And, you know, Terry drove for that organization.
Hinky Eames, gas man, extraordinaire.
Exactly.
He's the first one that told me the expression about rooting and gouging.
Was he? What else did he teach?
He said that's real racing, son. Rooting and gouging. I can't tell you what else.
Did I give you a nugget?
It had something to do with moonshine, Hinky Eames.
Did I give you a nugget?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice from Indianapolis is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing info, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. Final moments of this second practice here at Indianapolis, and time now for our Sprint Now moment. For that, we go to the smiling Bob Dillner.
I love Mark Martin, and Alan Gustafson and the team certainly love him as well. Fastest on the racetrack, but interesting conversation between you, the team, and Mark before he came into the garage area. What did he tell you?
He said that's about as fast as he wants to go. So
before he would hit the wall.
Before we hit the wall. So he felt good with the car and felt good with the lap and thought would be better suited to get it ready for tomorrow and save what we've got. So Mark's really, really smart, and he does a really good job. So I'll take him at his word, and we'll get it ready to go. Really proud of all these guys on the CarQuest Kellogg. Chevy did a good job. And I've got to say, on a sad note, I got to say hey to the Salone family. Temple Salone lost his wife with CarQuest this week, and we really hate that. But they're a great family, and just they're in our thoughts and prayers.
Definitely our thoughts and prayers go out to them. One thing that Alan did tell me, still have a little work to do in race trim. Wendy?
If you look at the driver points, Denny Hamlin is that first guy, 5th in points with no wins this season. He's hoping to turn things around as the chase cutoff gets closer and closer. This practice session, he's been about top 10 most of the practice session and just dropped to 12th on that chart. Their problem with them is ignition problems. The engine has been missing and stumbling for most of this practice session. It did not do it in the first practice session. So in talking to the engine tuner, Chris Woodward, he said they haven't diagnosed the problem just yet. However, last time out there on that run, the engine was did not miss at all for Denny Hamlin, no issue. So on and again and off again problems for Denny Hamlin, and that ignition will keep you posted throughout the day.
Yeah, we only have about 2 minutes left of this practice. Now, here's what's interesting, guys. We talked about 46 cars being here. We know Terry Labonte will be in the show. Right now, the 3 slowest, go or go home cars would be David Gilliland, Sterling Marlin, and Derek Cope. But how about this deal with David Gilliland? Well, actually, Max Pappas just jumped up there a little bit quicker. But before Pappas just made that run, David Gilliland was a 51.323. Max Pappas was a 51.322. That was 1/1000th difference separating. And remember, this race right here pays roughly about $140,000 just to start. And of course, if you don't make this show, you just get a thank you note, and we'll see you in Pocono.
Larry, 2 drivers under 50 seconds, Juan Pablo Montoya and Mark Martin. Then we have, let's see, 35 drivers who have run a 50-second lap.
Now, we were kind of laughing at what Mark Martin said to Alan Gustafson about that was about too fast. While we were talking to Alan, Juan Pablo Montoya made another attempt. He is now 1/100th of a second slower than Mark Martin as we're riding along right now with Tony Stewart, who's making his, I think, final attempt during this practice session to see how quick he can get this 14 car going.
Still a lot of activities here at the Brickyard following this practice. John Roberts will have NASCAR Live. Don't forget, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series teams will qualify across town at O'Reilly Raceway Park and then race later tonight here on Speed.
Just seems like the Roush Fenway group, they're struggling now. Their fastest is Greg Biffle, who's 20th.
Tony Stewart just completed his little run. He's now 11th quickest in that number 14 Chevrolet.
There's the Yard of Bricks. Honor to be with you, folks.